When analysing Robert Frost's The Road Not Taken, we need to first look at the context. This poem was inspired by fellow poet and friend Edward Thomas, whom he had met in England and was subsequently killed in the First World War. Thomas was reputedly in the habit of expressing regret over whatever decision he had made. Now let's read the poem. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both, and be one traveller long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other, as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though as for that, the passing there had worn them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay, in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day. Yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling with this sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence, two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less travelled by, and that has made all the difference. Now let's look at the form and structure of the poem. The poem has rhyming quatrains of iambic tetrameter. There's a predictable structure to reflect that life is predictable, and we should therefore not agonise over the decisions that we make. The 4 quatrains of equal length reflects the equal decisions in the poem between the two roads. This is a narrative poem depicted through the personal pronoun I, which is repeated 9 times. Repetition emphasises the deeply personal aspect of the poem, suggesting we can all relate to the situation. We have all had to make difficult personal decisions. It is lyrical, expressing strong feelings and emotions by using power of imagery. Now let's look at rhythm and rhyme. This poem is written in iambic tetrameter, with slight variations throughout, which is reflective of the speaker who feels he has went against the norm and has chosen the lesser travelled path. There is an A-B rhyme scheme depicting 2 distinctive rhyming patterns to reflect the 2 paths the speaker is faced with. There's strong oral imagery and visual imagery throughout. I'll explore this in detail in the language section of this video. Tone is incredibly important in this poem, reflecting the state of mind of the speaker. The line, "Sorry I could not travel both," is significant because it conveys the human desire of not wanting to make decisions in the first place. There's a contemplative tone throughout. Choosing between 2 paths without any knowledge of where the road will lead is a difficult dilemma. However, the tone is also calm and measured, not making any rash decisions. Later on, the use of the lamenting "oh" and the exclamation mark emphasises the poet or the speaker's regretful tone. He wishes he had the opportunity to explore the other road too. He is resigned and is in anticipation of the remorse that he will regret the decision later on. Our speaker is incredibly conflicted. One of the attractions of the poem is its archetypal dilemma, one that the speaker feels, one that we instantly recognise because each of us encounters it innumerable times, both literally and figuratively. Paths in the woods and forks in the roads are ancient and deep-seated metaphors for the lifeline, its crises and decisions. Identical forks in particular symbolise for us the nexus of free will and fate. We are free to choose, but we do not really know beforehand what we are choosing between. Our route is thus determined by an accretion of choice and chance, and it is impossible to separate the two. And this is what creates the speaker's confliction in the poem. Now let's look at the themes explored. The Sia theme would be journeys. Here we can see that there's the literal journey of going down the path and the metaphorical journey, symbolic of life's choices. However, we also have other themes. The Road Not Taken shares the theme of choices. The Road Not Taken centres on the concept of choice. The path that the speaker is walking on is splitting in 2 directions, and he has to decide which way to go. This path is not just in the woods, but also represents a decision in his life. Something in his life is changing, forcing him to make a choice. Yet he has had a really hard time deciding. One moment he thinks one way is better. The next, both paths are about the same. Whether or not he has a reason why the choice he makes is better, he has to make it, and that choice changes his life. We also have the theme of dreams, hopes, and plans. Choices, like the choice, the road not taken, are linked to the future. The speaker of this poem realises his choice of path will change his life. but the tricky part about the nature of the future is that the speaker won't know how his decision will change his life until it has already changed it. The speaker thinks of his lost opportunities as his choice takes him into one future and leaves another behind. There's also the theme of man and the natural world. Nature is used as a metaphor for the life of the speaker. The speaker contextualizes a major decision by writing about it as if it were something he encountered while walking in a forest in the fall. This metaphor helps us wrap our minds around the complexities of a choice that will decide his future. There is also the theme of exploration. Our speaker is out in the woods without a map and he doesn't know which path to take. But instead of turning away and running back to where he came from, he chooses a path and forges on, willing to face whatever challenges the path may lead him to. He is attracted to a path that might be less travelled, which suggests he likes to go where few people have gone before. The poem embraces exploration, suggesting the only way to see what's beyond the bend in the road is to keep walking. Now let's look at line-by-line analysis of language. The first line, two roads diverged, acts as a metaphor for choice. Then if we look at a yellow wood, there's pathetic fallacy of the autumnal season. The changing weather reflects the speaker's change in circumstances. Things are changing, and he has to make a choice, go down a certain path. This could also reflect the age of the speaker. He is in the fall of his life. Now let's look at the "and sorry I could not travel both, and be one traveller long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could." Here we can see the anaphora and enjambment being used to reinforce the time taken to contemplate which path to take. If we look at the line "and be one traveller long I stood," we can also see the use of caesura here, slowing the pace, emphasising time taken by the speaker to contemplate the decision he has made. If we look at "to where it bent in the undergrowth," we see the metaphor here. Here, nature is used to emphasise how the speaker tries to see what the choices actually entail. The speaker's mind is preoccupied with many difficult thoughts. He seeks information, a sign to determine which path he is supposed to take. He can easily see the short-term consequences or results of his decision, but not the long-term ones. The thickness of the trees represent uncertainty facing the speaker in each of the paths. The diction, perhaps, is important because it emphasises the uncertainty, as he attempts in vain to differentiate between the two paths. Then if we look at the next line, we see the sibilance, "because it was grassy." This evokes the sound of rustling leaves, creating oral imagery. Then we have the alliteration of "wanted where." Here, the alliteration emphasises the unexplored, something new and exciting, embracing ideas of exploration, suggesting the only way to see what lies beyond is to keep walking, yet he only uses this as a means to keeping the decision to himself after making it, and despite the fact that the roads are identical, he is talking himself into his chosen path. Here we can see, however, that the speaker undergoes some form of suffering. His decision involves suffering and loneliness, which is reflective of Frost's own life. If we look at the line, "had worn them really about the same," we can also see the assonance further generating the excitement. There's also this idea of the sense of the unknown becoming evident. The speaker isn't able to anticipate what will happen if he chooses a certain path. We have to make choices without knowledge of the impact, the consequences, or the result. This is further reflected through the choice of the word "both" and "equally." Then if we read, "and both that morning equally lay in leaves," we can see the pathetic fallacy of the morning, suggesting new beginnings, new departures, after choosing a path to follow. Also note the soft alliteration of "lay" and "leaves," reflecting that both paths are equally attractive and alluring to the speaker. The lamenting "O" emphasises the fact that he cannot come back to the second road, because once he has chosen, this will lead him down new paths and new roads to choose from. Figuratively, they'll become decisions that you will never get to make again, further shown through the uncertain, doubted, and I should ever come back. Where leads on to where is important because we can see that this is representative of the fact that life may change. One path will flow into another, then another, then another, and so on. Note the change to future tense in I shall be telling this with a sigh. This implies the journey has not yet come to an end. He is justifying his decisions or reasons, or perhaps mocking those who feel the need to justify decisions through to the end and attaching pointless meaning to them, especially here where the roads are identical. There was no reason for choosing one over the other. Also note the onomatopoeia of sigh. Making any choices in life necessarily excludes other paths and therefore involves loss. Despite any misfortune or fortune picking one path will bring, there will always be a sense of missed opportunity of what could have been, or alternatively, this could represent his relief at making a decision, further emphasising the uncertainty of the speaker. Now look at the parallelism, or at the repetition of ages and ages. This reinforces the lasting effect the decision will have on him. Now look at the parallelism of I took the one less travelled by. If both are exactly the same, how can this be? So there's a sort of contradiction here. However, it could be meant ironically because it doesn't matter, as both paths are identical. And the final line, and that has made all the difference, is important because his life is now fundamentally different than it would have been if he had chosen the other path. Although he does assert that there are some journeys you can't retrace and have to go on living with the consequences. Let's look at the symbolism. This poem is about actual and figurative roads, the roads we walk and drive on, and the roads we take through life. As the speaker of this poem discusses, for every road we take, there's a road we don't take. Wrong turn or not, the roads we can take end up making significant changes in our lives, and we will always wonder about the ones we didn't try. Line 1 sets the scene for the literal and metaphorical fork in the road the speaker faces. The road splitting in the woods is a metaphor for choice. Wherever the speaker's life has taken him so far, he has come to the point where to go any further, he needs to make a choice that takes him down one path and precludes him from taking the other. Because the fork in the road is a metaphor for choices throughout the poem, it is called an extended metaphor. Lines 4 to 5. The description of the road is a metaphor for the future. Just like we can only see a path in the woods so far, we can only see the consequences of our decisions for a short while into our future. Line 6. Here the speaker decides that even though he spent a long time looking down one road, he's going to take the other, which seems just as interesting. This is probably a metaphor for a sudden decision when we think about doing one thing, like staying with a boyfriend or girlfriend for a long time, but then, all of a sudden, we find ourselves doing something else. We don't know why we did it, other than that we thought we'd be just as happy with one choice as the other. Line 13 to 15. The speaker wants to be able to take both roads, but realises the nature of these roads is such that he probably will never be able to come back to this place. This is a metaphor for a decision that changes everything. Once you've made it, you can never go back. The repetition of the first line brings us back to the beginning of the extended metaphor, and then the last two lines conclude the metaphor. In line 19, one of the roads is being affirmed as less travelled, even though the narrator seemed unsure before. And then we get the famous line, and that has made all the difference, which solidifies the figurative level of this poem by saying that taking the road that the speaker took, making the choice that he made, has changed his life. Title's significance. The road acts as an extended metaphor for paths in life that people can take. Journeys through paths in the wood reflects the paths people take in life. Therefore, the road not taken suggests repentance on why he has opted for the lesser travelled road. There's ambiguity in that it could also be a reference to the poet choosing to not take any road, focusing on the indecisive nature of the speaker featured in the poem. It is also important to note that the poem is named after the path that he has not chosen, the one he doesn't follow, the one that he leaves behind, suggesting preoccupation with what could have been. The pace in this poem is incredibly important, and we can see caesura used throughout. Let's look at the first example of caesura in the first stanza. Here Caesura slows the pace, emphasising the time taken by the speaker to contemplate the decisions he has to make. Then if we move on to the second stanza, we can see that here Caesura emphasises the either-or deliberation in his choice making. In the final stanza, the Caesura again creates a pause, slowing the pace, allowing him this time to explore the impact of finally making his decision.